Hi there, welcome to Two Little C's. Today I'm going to be doing a tutorial on how to get really tight stitches for your Amigurumi toys. I've done just a simple swatch here. It's 10 single crochets across, and I'm going to be using this to show you how you can get really tight stitches. Tight stitches are important because you don't want stuffing on your Amigurumi to show through the holes in between the posts of your stitches. So let's get started. My first row is just an average row. I didn't make it super tight so you can see the holes between the stitches. And this is undesirable when you're making amigurumi. I'm starting here with an F hook because if you're going to be making amigurumi, you want to use an F hook or smaller, and this is a worsted weight yarn. We're going to do a swatch here, and it's going to help you to determine what size hook is going to be best for the particular type of yarn that you're using. If you're making your own creations, then you're going to need to know what type of yarn to use. And if you're a beginner, then what hook for what yarn might not always be clear. So that's why we're going to be doing this swatch here. Now, sorry about my focus here, but I'm just going to do a couple of stitches here and show you. If you just crocheted regularly, you would get these unsightly holes. Now, why is my thing not focusing? There we go. You'd see these holes here in your stitches, and that is just inevitable. So in order to get a really tight stitch, you want to use the shaft of your hook. When you have your loop on your hook, you really want to pull it tight, and I like to jiggle it to get it really down tight in there. You want to have your loop tight around your hook, then go into your stitch, and when you pull up the hook, you want to pull it tight again so that both of these loops are really tight on this shaft. Then you want to pull your yarn through and tighten it down, and that stitch is really tight compared to the ones before it. Now obviously you're going to see this hole here because this first round was done very loosely. So let me just do a couple more. You want to pull it, and sometimes I jiggle and then pull it through. Okay, now let's work the rest of these tightly so we can get on to the next row, and I can show you what it would look like if you had 2 rows of tight stitches. Okay. Here's the last one. Now obviously if you're working amigurumi, you would be working in the round and you wouldn't be turning. So it would look a lot different, but we're just making a swatch here, so that's okay. And now that I'm making these really tight, and the row before it was really tight, you can see those holes here look a lot better. Now I'm not sure if you can see, but there is still a little bit of a gap here. And that is just an indicator that this particular hook is a little bit too big for this size of yarn when making amigurumi. You really want there to be almost no visible holes at all. So there, I've made a couple of really tight ones. And, whoops. See, now here is a good example. This right here is not extremely tight, but if you jiggle your hook, it'll pull, and it'll pull that last stitch really tight there. You see that? That's a little trick that I always do. You just pull and jiggle, and that's why I jiggle it, because then it pulls that previous stitch really tight. But here you see the hole there, and that's an indicator that this hook size is just too large. Sometimes it's a little bit of a guesswork, depending on how long you've been doing this. Because generally you're going to be using a hook that is 2 to 3 times smaller than the recommended hook size for that yarn. So if you're just starting out and you're not following a pattern, chances are you're not going to know what hook to use. So here I have a D hook, and I'm going to show you this hook here. I generally use a D when I'm working with sort of an average worsted weight yarn. This here is Red Heart Super Saver yarn, so I generally use a D hook for that. Whoops. Okay. And so once again, you want to pull that tight. When you pull up your loop, you want to keep a snug hold on your yarn when you pull it through. Whoops. So pulling tightly now. Let me just finish this row here, and then I'm going to show you the next row so you can see that there really aren't any holes when you're using this size of a hook. Oh, I need to pull some more yarn here. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to the next row, and I'm just going to do a couple of stitches here for you. 2, 3. Okay, if you look through here, the holes, although you can see through them, they're almost not there. And that makes this a good hook size to use for this size yarn. You can really see these stitches are really tight now compared to how they were. You can see how it's just sort of tapering upwards on the sides here. But remember, the key to getting the tight stitches is just pulling, and of course using a smaller hook. You want to pull that around the shaft of the hook, pull it again, and then draw through. Be really careful when you're going in between those stitches, making sure that you're in the correct stitch, because sometimes with these really tight stitches, it's really easy to sort of skip one sometimes. You know how us crocheters get, we kind of just go on autopilot sometimes. But there you go. There's how you get tight stitches. This video is part of a 31-day series of amigurumi how-tos and tutorials and how to sort of create your own amigurumi designs. If you want to find out more about the 31 days of amigurumi, come check out my blog. The link will be below in the description box.